Good morning from here in London. Thank you for giving us an hour or so of your time for today's webinar, Better Medical Device Design Faster, Improve Quality and Reduce Risk Earlier using digital twins for simulation as part of your digital enterprise strategy. Okay, we have three presenters, if you will, today, but I will probably just get straight into it because we do have a lot packed in. First up, we have Jim Thompson, who's a Director, Industry Strategy, Medical Device and Pharmaceutical Industries at Siemens. Jim has worked in the product lifecycle management industry for over 30 years, initially in R&D roles for development of CAD, CAM and PLM software, and then as a lead responsible for technology consulting with customers in a variety of industries. Since around 2006, Jim has focused exclusively on medical device and pharmaceutical industries. And Jim has prepared his material via video, and we will be playing his video as a first hit, if you will. Following up from Jim, we have Christian Debus, who's a Director for Life Sciences here at CDAPCO. He focuses on business development in the pharmaceutical and biomedical device industries. His role requires that he closely interact and collaborate with our customers, sales, marketing, development, and service team, again, here at CDAPCO. And finally, we have Sampat Nidadavlu, who is an application engineer in our New York office and has been at CDAPCO for almost 3 years and specializes in biomedical engineering and life sciences. Okay, so first up, we have the video from Jim Thompson. So I will cue that up, and I'll get that going immediately.
Well, thank you for the introduction. I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about digital simulation for verification and validation of medical products and put that in the context of our overall PLM software capability at Siemens. So first, though, let's just summarize the overall business outlook in the medical device industry. There's been an amazing history of success in the medical device industry. We're seeing great benefit of medical devices throughout our lifetimes, as this graphic indicates. There's constant innovation and use of new technology. The example highlighted in the picture is the prosthetic leg. And the net result on this is that everybody's life expectancies are getting more and more and higher. So women, 81 years, males, 76, and the future is very bright with mobile connected devices combined with big data. This offers the opportunity for more personalized, more timely, and cost-efficient healthcare in the future. But there's some headwinds. There's some challenges and trends that medical device manufacturers are facing. Demographics and chronic diseases is the first. The highest growth rates in regions around the world have the least ability to pay, but yet they have the same chronic disease patterns as Western countries. Outcome economics is another challenge. There's a consumer culture in which people want personalized solutions that are tailored to them, to their particular disease conditions. But with volume procurement and reimbursement tied to total episode of care and patient outcomes, that's a particular challenge. And most companies these days are trying to globalize their operations. That's always a difficult thing to do across all the different organizations from R&D down to sales and services. And then also another particular challenge is the complexity of devices versus the maturity of the operational processes across medical device organizations. What we're seeing is the need for faster new product turns with ever more electronics and software-based innovations in those products in order to retain competitive advantage and differentiation as well as product margins. So in the face of these challenges, we also have to look at how the medical device industry is performing. So on this graphic, what we've seen over the past 6 or 7 years is a significant increase in adverse events, about 3 times increase from 2009 to 2014, and in parallel, about a 50% increase in recalls. We're also hearing from some key industry analysts, perhaps some of the reasons for that and some of the risks that late discovery of these issues, quality issues or safety issues cause. So there's a McKinsey report entitled "Why Quality Should Be on the Medical Device CEO Agenda," in which they talk about the growing competitiveness and increasing complexity of medical device products, and cite the fact that the traditional methods of compliance by inspection or quality by inspection is becoming obsolete, and they cite the need for the industry to start adopting cross-industry best practices to make significant improvements in patient outcomes and safety, and importantly, leading to economic benefits as well. And as well, the FDA is recognizing this as a problem, and that there's a case for quality initiative over the last 3 or 4 years and ongoing, in which the FDA is saying that quality and quality system regulation and traditional approaches should really only be viewed as a baseline, and they're looking for companies to focus in the future on critical to quality practices that on a day-to-day basis would be correlated to higher quality and higher safety outcomes for devices. So, and we know that the costs for late discovered problems such as adverse events and recalls are very, very expensive. And there's a report here from Josh Makauer that cites some average expenses for safety and feasibility clinical studies and full-on clinical studies, and you can see it's anywhere from 10 to 15 months of time for these studies on average, and anywhere from $4 to $10 million to actually execute those studies in the field. And so our approach for this, to solve this problem and to lead to cross-industry adoption of new practices, is to apply digital technology that enables a transformative change. And so we think that overall, across the entire product life cycle, a variety of digital technologies can be applied to change the way products come to life, to change the way products are realized in manufacturing, and to change the way that products evolve through feedback from the use in the healthcare system. And today, of course, we're going to focus particularly on the use of digital simulation technology in R&D, and we think that's a key strategic best practice that can make a significant impact and reduce the number of quality problems, to work out those issues earlier in the product life cycle. Ultimately, what we're after is using digitalization to collapse the entire innovation life cycle, to reduce the amount of time that it takes to design, plan, engineer, and execute and service products, as well as using digital twins at every step of the product life cycle that can be connected through these digital threads in order to increase product knowledge earlier and work out these kinds of product problems that we mentioned earlier on the slides at a much earlier stage where it's less costly to fix the problems. So with that, I'll hand it back over, and we can talk a little bit about CD Adapco solutions.
All right, so up and rolling. First of all, I want to thank Jim Thompson again for his presentation. When we talked about this webinar beforehand, he said he's going to do the, let's say, 100,000 feet perspective. I'm going to bring it down to 25, 30,000, and then we'll have samples to a hands-on demonstration related to real life engineers out there in the field. And so Jim and I, we talk frequently and planning the strategies for the next coming years, since now CD Adapco is part of Siemens PLM. And so it's very exciting times, and we're excited to bring our technology to the table, and that's why we want today specifically focus on the integration and the power of integration of simulation into the PLM cycle. And with that, let me talk a little bit about our product. Many of you will probably be familiar with Star-CCM Plus flagship. That's mostly known for its strength in fluid and thermal, but we also do structure, acoustics, and particles. In life sciences, acoustics is not so important, or not, well, we have our customers here as well, but particle and structural is, of course, a very big field as well, discrete element modeling and so forth. And so we focus in business development, where I'm active in different industries. I'm focusing on the life sciences, but all these technologies, of course, are applied in all these different industries as they're listed. Major important factors for us always are the accuracy of our code, the speed, quality, and the user experience. And that user experience is a big part of what we're going to talk about today as well, interoperability between different codes to really make PLM with simulation useful and functional. A little deeper into the applications that we see at CT ADAPCO with our codes, Star-CCM Plus, and also our optimization code HEAT for TDAR. I'd like to break it down into three main components: pharmaceutical manufacturing, medical device equipment design, and disease diagnostics. And those are the areas I'm going to focus on most of today. We also talk frequently about microfluidics, drug delivery, and clean rooms and operating rooms. But these kind of sub-areas that actually fit into the other ones as well, like drug delivery would be partly in pharmaceuticals, but also in device design. Microfluidics, of course, with the device design and diagnostics, and clean room, operating rooms has a lot to do with equipment again, and so forth. So, but let's talk mostly about these first three: pharmaceutical, medical device, and disease, and let's address the different subjects here on how we see the integration in PLM cycles for these different areas. First of all, let's see where are we today with our simulation maturity. You might have read the book Crossing the Chasm, and I think that's right where we are. We are just in the middle of crossing the chasm into hitting the early majority through design exploration and going away from the early adopters and expanding into this industry. The early adopters are all the people who start working with us when they go into simulation. They usually start out with validation and troubleshooting. If something went wrong, something's broken, we got to fix it. We just spent a lot of money. We built a mixing tank with pharmaceuticals for $1 million, or we have a recall on a medical device, and now we go in and fix it. An example here would be inhaler design. So not that anything went wrong on this one, but we started with a very basic design to, let's say, use 3 different driver devices for using one inhaler. So a small step forward. And another example would be looking at operating rooms and the complexity in there. So just at the beginning, you need to start the complexity of different parameters and understand your capabilities in simulation and modeling. But I think, I don't think so. I think it's quite clear, if I talk to our customers, that from validation troubleshooting, we are definitely moving into design exploration, crossing this chasm towards optimization and closing the loop with this design team. When we are doing this, we need to think about PLM integration, really make the best out of our designs and our work that we do as engineers, tie it together with the clinical trials, tie it together with the overall design team, with the people out there who run clinical trials, and feed it back to us so we can close that loop. So with our technology, we enable parameter studies that gives us confidence and robustness into the robustness of the design. And with that, we can now simulate and verify designs faster. So what we did a few years ago with 3 designs in 3 weeks, we can do in 12 hours on 80 designs now on the same inhaler, create 80 different data points on a Pareto curve to find exactly the operating point where we want to be at. But that's not the only optimization we can do. A very big important factor here to bridge the gap from benchtop clinical trials to support of clinical trials in vivo is that we need to validate and calibrate our data, our simulation to the experiment. And here we can also use optimization, like in the case where we have a Windkessel model, where we use simulation, optimization of parameters for the exit boundary conditions to tie it into a benchmark, connect that, and then bridge that gap into the clinical trials. For this, we use our product HEAT. So PLM integration is really beyond just looking at CAD design. It's a big factor of it, of course, but it's about process integration as well. So as I mentioned, you need to go and use process parameter analysis for simulation trials as well as clinical trials to really make that jump, that gap. That's the future. So we need to fit simulation right into the end-to-end PLM. Another example to relate back to the pharmaceutical applications is where we are starting to use keys, our optimization product, to observe, monitor manufacturing processes and tie them to models that we then can bring back into the equipment design. Or we can even look at clinical data management, raw data that we manage and tie to data, so we can basically help our customers to plan for smarter clinical trials and then feed that back into the device or drug design. But where are our customers today? Our customers today start really show suffering from the cost, the expenses that they have with clinical trials. A clinical trial is anywhere between 20 to 70, 60, $70 million, depending on what type it is and complexity. With personalized medicine growing, everybody is driving that direction. More devices coming out, and as Jim was saying, more recalls, more complexity, more problems to solve. A lot of people think the only real efficient way to bend this cost curve is by applying modeling and simulation to support clinical trials. This is a slide from our customer that was presenting that recently at the conference, and we're fully in agreement with that. So we are pretty convinced, well, we are convinced that this is the path to the future, and our work with ASME, 40, MDS, and other consortia really shows that the industry is pushing that direction, and we see in our daily work with our clients who are pushing more into MDX, but even into this larger picture of PLM integration and then really clinical trial integration. With that, we'll be able to have better designs faster, and with that, accelerate FDA approval processes at reduced cost. Let's go another 10,000 feet down to more the reality of our simulation software that you have to deal with, or you have the joy to deal with when you solve these problems. This is an older slide that I showed 3-4 years ago from the DeBakey Hospital in Houston to demonstrate at the time what we can do with our meshing capabilities. Being a #1 best quality mesh meshing company is just one piece of the pie to be a successful CFD vendor. You need to go fast from CAD to a quality mesh, have powerful meshing algorithms and so forth, and good tools to clean up FDA data that come in, maybe from partners like Materials, Simplify or Volvo. So these tools have largely improved over the years, so we're not sitting back and enjoying how great we are, but we're focusing a lot on physics now, on usability, and how you can prepare and clean up these CAD data sets. So we made a lot of progress in that these years. And really driving the usability, but also the power of these algorithms they use for robustness. So something we recently did, we now do more morphing with data point tagging that you can do, for example, on this ventricular filling study. So in this case, we were able to run this heart model without remeshing at any point in the simulation. So that is a faster, safer, and more robust, and it gives you a better accurate solution, since you don't have to smooth out the pressure waves that you get if you have to remesh. So a lot of progress that we made here. And on the other side, if you look at tools that come out, for example, on the Siemens NX side of things, where they have first implementation of the Parasol glue conversion modeling approach, which allows you to bring in mesh data like STL and then alongside with device design tied together into solids and surfaces. We can see that from every end that you come, you can use these tools actively from one tool to the other with combined formats in a very efficient and effective way. And I think that something I want to underline here is that I learned that when we joined Siemens, and gladly at CDW we had the same idea of all these years, it's really about interoperability. We want to solve your problem. If you use a specific tool that you're good at it, we want you to use it together with our tools to solve the problem in the best fashion for you. So, and that's important also on the physics level. As you might know, we couple with various FEA codes to do effective FSI coupling. One of our best coupling methods is implicit coupling with apophysis FSI. As you can see in this model of a linear peristaltic pump, a very challenging problem where it comes down to almost zero gap with remeshing in this case, and nonlinear behavior of this peristaltic pump coupled with CFD. We also, of course, have our own FEA solver coupled with many others, but we keep supporting and really pushing the apophysis FSI coupling as one of the strongest solutions that we can see in the industry. Then we go to a more diagnostics or clinical application, rather, I'd say. This is a presentation that was given at our user conference by our users from the Gerichte University in Magdeburg, Germany. I think we have some of the clients here on the phone today. I can see them in the list, so welcome. Thank you for your great work. So in this case, it's about determining flow divider sizing, so porosity and positioning in a clinical aneurysm treatment study. It's really in the clinical environment where you want to use FEA to deploy a stent, then run CFD to test out the velocity and positioning of the device, how to be throttle down the flow in the aneurysm, and really close it in a loop to look at many, many data sets of various patients tied up to cloud data sets, learning algorithms and understanding how the post-operating procedure and effects are really beneficial to the client, to the customer, to the patient. Interesting here is also that optimization was used, but in this case it was used to optimize mesh generation. Because what is always essential in these models and cases is to look at calibration, to look at validation and build up credibility. So only if you can reproduce the results good, well, and have validated data, these tools will be accepted in the future in the clinical environment. And we'll get to the business side of things at my very last slide before we go to the demonstration. But I want to talk a little bit more about validation. Here's another example that we did with the University of Buffalo in the US on intracranial aneurysm rupture prediction. So this was a comparison with PIV data 2D, and we got good agreement on the first shot and further improving that, probably looking at 3D PIV. So again, back to the work with ASME and MDIC and others, validation is crucial and verification of the code just as well. And that's a lot of work that we put our effort in, and we see the benefits now in our work with our clients who apply this. And more of our customers are also using the guidelines from the ASME VNV40, applying that in their daily work and seeing the benefits and raking in the benefits of this work. Let me bring it back one more time before I close with my last slide in the summary. Let me bring it back to the pharmaceutical side of things. Obviously, a lot of our simulation technology is used on the product equipment simulation side of things. So to discover, better design faster, we offer a lot of mixing tools, application tools with STAR-CCM plus capabilities that are very going deep in multi-physics and multi-phase modeling. But we also have a vertical application called admixtures that is very powerful for this field. But we also want to make sure that you understand how this ties also into PLM and into process simulation as well. So with our tool HEATS, you can start really combining and looking at, and I mentioned that before for clinical trials as well, looking at model behavior in the process environment. So bringing your processes down into 1D models or 3-dimensional models, tying them together with your validation, with your experimental and services models that we also provide to calibrate, to validate your 3-dimensional models with CFD, and HEATS is a great tool to supply that so you can ensure efficient production and cope with increased complexity and spans over the whole spectrum. So we work a lot here also with the pharma VSS group from Siemens to really have a complete solution for our customers. With that, I go to my last slide, just summarizing what I said, and after that, Sanford will give you a demonstration on the case of a clinical trial support application of the catheter you can see in the middle here. So with pharma, we said, okay, a lot of manufacturing processes that we're helping, focusing on continuous manufacturing, biopharma, disposables, and we can help here with solving transport particulate flows on powders, tablets, inhalers, and drug transport, for example. Clinical trial support is what I spent most of the time on today, and you will see a little more now on the on the demonstration from SAMPAD. When I iterate again, CFD, FSI, NDX to support benchtop and clinical trial and support regulatory reporting and documentation via Plm Integration is what the future is going to be, where we put a lot of effort in. Of course, our tools are also used for medical equipment design and electronics, diagnostic, filling, clean room, and so forth. One last word on a medical diagnostic application. We work here a lot with academics, but also some industrial partners. STAR-CCM Plus is a great tool for validation of in-house tools or clinical tools that are developed, a great research tool to find new diagnostic applications, or a direct diagnostics tool as well. So we work here with startup companies to develop these tools. The question here for me is not the technology, is it ready? Some diagnostics applications still need much more research. Others are ready for prime time, ready to go, and there's some out in the market now, as you can see. If you look around, and many of you are aware of that, the big problem, I think, here, or challenge here, is to find the right business model, and we've yet to see which one will be successful, and also that's something we're working very hard on together here at Siemens, at CD Adapco in the future. And thank you for your attention, and now let's bring it down to the engineering level on an example that SAMPAD will demonstrate to us. And with that, I'll give it back to Jay, so he can control and pass on the ball to SAMPAD.
Yep, thanks. So as Jay mentioned, I'm an application engineer based in our New York office, and I'm going to show kind of an overview of the setup of a simulation using our software, using the image that you've seen on the cover of this webinar. So just an outline of this, I'll describe the background of the problem and go through the steps from importing the geometry to defining the boundaries and meshing to setting up the physics and some post-processing. So just a description of this problem. This is a catheter that we're trying to do. The application, the specific demo, is of what's called a central line, which can be used to either draw blood or administer fluids or medicine. And in this model, we'll actually be simulating drug insertion into the vessel, which will be represented through a massless tracer. So just to kind of go over the geometry, a catheter is placed in a stenosis-induced wall, as you can see from the vessel geometry image. The catheter geometry is based off a generic design. It's not based off any specific design, and just some of the dimensions are listed. And as mentioned, it's created inside the vessel wall, and this was created using our in-house 3D CAD software, but to express the idea of kind of these twin modeling is that you can import your own geometry into the simulation as well from a third-party software. To describe some of the boundary conditions, we need to assign both boundary names and types. So for example, we have two inlets, the catheter and the artery. I highlighted the hole walls, the catheter hole walls, to represent kind of understand the direction of flow as it's going from the catheter towards the outflow pressure outlet. Meshing is considered a very important part in our software. It's kind of one of the more crucial aspects in setting up your model, highlighting the fact that even though you can have the physics correct, if the meshing is of poor quality, you'll never get a correct answer. So in this model, we applied what's called a polyhedral meshing to the geometry, and we added a further refinement around the hole walls, as you can see from the image in the bottom right. Prism layers assisted with cleaning up the near wall values, and as I say, if it's not applied properly, it can invalidate the results and lead to and even cause the solution to fail in most cases. Here we have our physics setup, which is represented through a pop-up window, so it's easy selection. In this case, we applied a unsteady flow, laminar and segregated application. The values for the inlet velocities were actually created using field functions based off a publication. And the tracer was created as a delay so that there's some initial stabilization of the flow before the tracer die is introduced into the system. So just to show some example results, which I'll kind of go into more detail in the model. So just to kind of show the software, this is our version 1104, which is our latest version that's currently available. As I said, this is the geometry highlighted here with the mesh scene of a cut, which, like I said, you can actually see the layout of the mesh setup. Our tree is listed here for ease of use because it goes in order from geometry down to your physics to the regions and post-processing results down here. Just to kind of show the field functions that we're mentioning, these can be inputted into the system, and in this case, the velocity is initially of a steady state, and then once the die is introduced, after the solution's been stabilized, we then use the unsteady state application. And this allows for a lot more user-specific applications. I mean, you can, instead of just using steady flow, you can make it a more physiologically accurate flow of just applying a pulsatile flow. And just to kind of show some of the example scenes, this is a streamline displayer, and you can actually create some animations to actually see the flow as it's going from the inlet and exiting out through the system. And these can be exported out as AVI files so you can view them outside of the software as well. This is a vector plot, so you can actually see kind of the streamlines in a little bit more detail. The longer lines represent the higher velocities. And this is the image that you've kind of seen before of the tracer, in which you can actually apply more and more post-processing to give more information and have a scene be more significant in displaying the information that you're interested in. One thing you can do during these runs as well is that you can export certain time steps, and from there we can actually create a video showing the entire process as it's going from start to finish. So you can see that initially there is no movement in the velocity as it's stabilizing, but once the die is injected, because of those field functions, we're actually able to create a pulsatile flow that represents a cardiac cycle, and this goes through roughly, I think, 4 cycles before repeating. And you can kind of see the movement of the die as it's fluctuating and changing over time, and how the introduction of stenosis does affect the flow as compared to the other side, which has no stenosis induced. And I believe that's pretty much it with this model. There's a lot more applications. There's a lot more that can be done to it, and it just shows that this is just a sample of the type of information that you can extrude out of the simulation and present, and the amount of valuable information that's contained with it.
All attendees will receive a follow-up email from myself containing a link to the recording of today's session. Follow-up questions and requests for additional materials can be directed towards Christian. He's been kind enough to provide his email address. That is up on the screen if you wish to reach Christian. Please take a note of that, and you can follow up with him and reach out to him directly. So it just remains for me to say thank you to the panel, and of course thank you to you all for giving us just under an hour or so of your time. With that, the session is closed. Goodbye.